Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Lowell School Committee to order. Let me begin by wishing you all a happy St. Patrick's Day. I saw a lot of you this morning at the city manager's breakfast. Let us begin by honoring America, saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Ms. Martin.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Mr. Conway.
Here.
Ms. Doherty.
Here.
Ms. Larraba.
Here.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mr. Leary.
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. First order of business is special order of business, presentation and introduction of the recruiter for the Lowell High School headmaster, Donald McKillian, Executive Director, Massachusetts Association of School Personnel Administrators. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, we welcome Dawn here tonight. As we discussed at our last meeting, the business community, members of the business community have come forward and offered financial support to sponsor, I guess it was School Committee Leary's original suggestion of perhaps having a recruiter work with us to address, the vacancy of the headmaster position at the high school. As we are all aware, our first search resulted in one candidate being referred to myself. I interviewed the candidate. His name is presently in the pool. Given the significant position this represents for us, we thought we should clearly have more than one option, and we have extended the search. So I thought it would be a good idea. We have worked closely with Don over the last few weeks. He has met with us on various occasions and has done actually quite a bit of work for us to date. He knows that it's a time-sensitive matter for us, and he's given quite a bit of his time as well. He has met with Mr. Gallagher, as he has been the person who has been working with the business community to fund this particular position for us. With that said, Mr. Gallagher was planning to be here this evening as well, but couldn't because he got delayed with work. So again, we thank Mr. Gallagher for his efforts and others in the business community who he represents in this effort to support Lowell Public Schools find the next headmaster. So with that, Mayor, perhaps
Yes.
Don could do a presentation.
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Superintendent Scott. My name is Don McCallion, and I actually met Chris about a week and a half ago for the first time. So this has been kind of a rushed situation, but I know how important this is and the time frame that you have. By way of introduction, I am Executive Director of the Mass Association of School Personnel Administrators. We have about 190 HR professionals around the state that are part of the organization. I plan all their professional development activities and represent them at the state level. I spent the bulk of my career as the Director of Human Resources for the Framingham Public Schools, and in that capacity really saw a complete turnover of both the teaching and the administrative staff in Framingham. So I got a lot of experience in recruiting and going through the search process. I also have been consulting over the last few years since I've retired for various school districts, not the least of which is Fall River, where I spent about 2 years helping them with some HR issues. I also was the consultant that was used by the town of Framingham in their latest superintendent search. So I spent about 7 months last year on that, and that search was very successful. Also, by way of introduction, I must say that I'm coming back to Lowell after being away for 42 years. I actually started in education here in Lowell back in 1968, and there are 2 Lowellians that are responsible for my getting into education and staying in education, and they are Patrick Mogan and Jack Abraham. Pat Mogan, as you know, is a visionary and did so much for this city, and one of the things that he did was go after federal money. And one of the programs that he went after was something called the Teacher Corps program. And you had a Teacher Corps program in Lowell for 3 or 4 years where you were a training center, if you will, trying to get liberal arts college grads interested in working in urban settings. So that's where I started. Jack Abraham was my mentor. He was actually the team leader over at the Bartlett School, which is where I was assigned. So I also have another Lowell connection. 30 years after I was here in Lowell, my son graduated from UMass Lowell in 1998. And just parenthetically, we owe a lot, both my career and my son Christopher, to Lowell. In Christopher's case, it was the intern program that they had at UMass Lowell. He was an environmental science major that was so strong that it led to one position after another, and he is now an environmental scientist down in New York with Con Edison. So those are two Lowell connections that the McCallion family has. So I met Chris, as I said, a little over a week ago, and I started taking a look at the city as it is now and also the school system. And you have a lot to be proud of, as you well know, here in Lowell. It's a city of world culture. I looked at the website for the Office of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, and it's magnificent. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, it really showcases a lot of the cultural activities that are going on in your city. The museums, festivals, theaters, the arts community, et cetera. I also was impressed with looking at the Greater Lowell Workforce Investment Board, which has been working very closely with the school district over the years and held a job fair, I believe, last year, where 600 students showed up looking for job opportunities during the summer. That sort of close cooperation between the district and the community is really impressive. I also met with Mike Gallagher, as Chris alluded to, last Friday, and it's incredible how the business community wants to work closely with the school district and takes great pride in the city, and their willingness to support the schools is really impressive. Speaking of the schools, there seem to be, as I read information about your district, that there's a great deal of positive communication going on right now in the district. You have professional learning communities that are becoming very active and effective. You have a cycle of inquiry program going on. You have collaborations, which is also really impressive, with UMass Lowell and Middlesex Community College. Two new initiatives that are highlighted on your website are the Fine Arts Pathway and the STEM Pathway. And what's really impressive is the dual enrollment initiative through that STEM Pathway program, where you're going to be working and allowing students to be enrolled at Lowell High School, but also involved with activities at UMass Lowell or Middlesex Community College. Your math scores last year on the MCAS showed the greatest growth of any urban district in the state, which is also very impressive. But I think one of the things that Lowell really needs is the outside world doesn't know enough about the positive things that are going on in your city. And they really need to be showcased, and they need to be, the general public out there needs to be made aware of all the great things that are going on in the city, because it really is a gem. Specifically on the high school headmaster position, as you know, the high school is your flagship school in the district. People look at that and say, whatever's going on at Lowell High School in many ways defines what this community is all about and what this district is all about. So finding the right headmaster to lead that school and to cause the changes that need to be made to make it an even better school is very important. You need to hire the right leader, you just can't settle. So I'm glad to see, in a way, that as a result of the first search that occurred, that the district just didn't settle and decided to go out again in another round. Just to talk the general framework of what's going on with administrators in the state. The turnover of administrators in the state has been huge over the last few years. Right now we have 41% of the principals and assistant principals in the state have been in their school districts for less than 6 years, 41%. So that shows you the amount of hiring that's been going on. And really what you have is you have young administrators out there and administrators that are approaching retirement, and not many in between, which is really a problem. You've got 28% of your principals and assistant principals in the state that are in their 30s and 40s. You have got 56% that are 50 or older, and you have only 16% that are in their 40s. And in their 40s, would be the cadre of people that probably would constitute what you should be looking for in a headmaster of Lowell High School, but the numbers just aren't there. In fact, 781 of our principals and assistant principals in the state are age 57 or older right now. 781. So we can presume that those 781 are probably going to be retiring within the next couple of years. So they're not part of the pool that we're going to be looking at either when we start looking for administrators. There aren't many preparation programs, quite frankly, training principals to work in an urban setting. You've had one in Boston. I'm not sure the funding is still continuing, but generally throughout the state, there just aren't those sorts of programs going on. And the job of a principal is a very complex job, as you know, and probably getting more complex all the time with a variety of programs that we have to offer, with the diversity of our student population, and all the accountability and the high-stakes testing that's been going on throughout the country. So the complexity is there, and there's also been a salary compaction where the differential between an assistant principal or a vice principal or a housemaster and a principal is not great enough, really, to be an incentive to take on the vast responsibilities that go along with being a principal of a school, particularly the size of Lowell, which is the second largest high school in the state, as you well know. In the current salary range of 120 to 130, what you seem to be attracting are not sitting principals in larger high schools in the state, and particularly in urban districts. What you're getting are vice principals, directors, et cetera, that are applying for this position. Some of the things that I think may have had a chilling effect on the applicant pool that you had the first time around. By the way, you had 13 the first time around, which isn't bad compared to some of the other statistics that we have. However, the numbers is just a numbers game, and it doesn't speak at all to the quality of the candidates. So you really have to obviously drill down and try to figure out whether the quality is there. But there are three things that I might point out that might have had a chilling effect on the number of candidates, maybe in the first round and hopefully not in this current round. By the way, the application deadline is today. The posting requirements ask for 3 current letters of reference in your ad that you put out there and your posting. My feeling is that your best candidates aren't going to want to expose themselves in the districts that they're currently in, that they're candidating in another district, and by requiring current letters of reference, you almost force them to go to their superintendent and ask for a letter of reference. The word gets out, and they become a lame duck in the community that they're currently in. So if you need to go out for another round, my advice is simply ask for a letter of interest and a resume and any other application materials that they want to produce. Leave the ball in the applicant's court to decide. If they have letters of reference already on hand, fine, they can submit them. But to require it, I think some candidates may not come forward because of that stumbling block. You also ask for official transcripts in your advertising. That would only be required at the end of the process, and getting official transcripts is not something that you would need up front. That would only be with the finalists, and certainly the one that you ultimately want to choose for the position. In the first round of interviews, it appears, I've done some looking on the archives of the Lowell Sun, and it appears that even before the 3 candidates were interviewed, the information about those candidates was out there. The Lowell Sun was publishing information about who they are, and unfortunately, ultimately, they didn't get the position, but they were exposed in their current school districts as candidating and not making it in Lowell. Under the open meeting law, the first round of interviews in a search like this can be an executive session, and I would suggest should be an executive session. You have that opportunity. It's only when they become semifinalists that it needs to be an open process. So candidates who might think about applying in Lowell may not apply if they think that the process is not what is typically going on throughout the state. As far as my efforts go up to this point, again, it's been a week and a half, but after my initial conversation with Chris, I did contact about 30 or 35 of my colleagues throughout the state, representing most, if not all, of the professional organizations that might produce or know of quality candidates for this headmaster position. They were organizations such as the Mass Association of School Committees, the Mass Superintendents Association, the Mass Secondary School Administrators Association. I contacted schools of higher ed, also superintendents from around the state that I know, superintendents from this area, hoping that maybe close proximity would generate some interest. I got a number of recommendations of folks and contacted all of them, and was able to find some candidates. Right at this point, it's 3 to add to your pool. These are candidates that wouldn't otherwise have applied, but now have their hat in the ring, so to speak, and hopefully will move ahead in the process with an interview. I will say that when I went out to folks to ask, do you know of anybody that might be interested and qualified for this position, some of the typical responses I got were, for instance, from Mary Lou Bergeron, the interim superintendent over in Lawrence, your sister city. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of strong secondary school leaders around. I don't know of anyone that is looking for this type of position. Paul Ash, superintendent of schools in Lexington. I'd like to help you. Unfortunately, I don't know of any possible high school principal candidates I could recommend. As you know, fewer and fewer qualified people are applying for principal positions. Matthew Matos, who's the principal of Taunton High School, who also happens to chair the urban committee, it's called, at the Mass Secondary School Administrators Association. So it's urban principals that serve on a committee, said, "Hi, Don, unfortunately, this is the current plight amongst urban high schools. There were only 3 applicants for the Durfee job in Fall River and only 2 for the New Bedford job." So we're up against it in the pool of candidates that we have. I'm fortunate that we did find 3 that are interested in Lowell, and I think that they have the type of experience that should be attractive, at least to get through the door to have an interview, and then it's up to the district to decide whether they're the right match for this position. I will say that one of the recommendations that I made to Chris is that the process of the whole search, I think, ought to be flipped around. In the first round, you had a 16-member advisory committee paper screening, meeting with candidates, moving them along to Chris. Chris did the one was moved along. Chris did the interviewing, and it wasn't a good match. So I suggested to Chris that since under the Ed Reform Act, the superintendent of schools is responsible for choosing the principal or the headmaster of Lowell High School, that the whole process start with her and her cabinet, and that she actually, along with her cabinet, do the paper screening and do the initial interviewing of the candidates to see if, in her judgment and with the advice of her cabinet, whether this might be a good match. At that point, you would have get a list of candidates that could be called finalists, actually. And those finalists could then go before an advisory committee. It could be the same one that you would already put together, or it could be a different one, different size, different composition. But an advisory committee, and their role is only to advise the superintendent of schools on on some feedback on the candidates that are brought forward. Because it's ultimately going to be, as I say, Chris's decision as to who's going to be chosen. Then, after getting that feedback from the advisory committee, the superintendent could then conduct site visits, do reference checking, criminal records check, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that there are a couple of things that need to be looked at before you go through this process. And that is, there's been a lot of discussion in the press, and I assume here, about restructuring the role of the headmaster at the high school. And one of the articles that I read, there was a comment about how your current headmaster had 92 exclusion hearings last year that he personally needed to conduct. 92 exclusion hearings, assuming that you have one per day, means that half of his school year was taken up in these exclusion hearings. Candidates thinking about applying and reading that are going to say, is that really the way I want to spend my life? I'd suggest that there is some restructuring that may need to occur, not only with the headmaster's responsibilities, but also I know there's been some discussion about possibly reinstating some positions that have fallen by the wayside over the years in the high school. Again, I'm getting this through the Lowell Sun articles, but the two positions that were listed there were the master position as well as a coordinator of pupil services. Now, I don't know where you're at with those deliberations, but I do think it would be helpful for a candidate that's thinking about taking over this position to know what the structure of the administration in that building is all about, A, and B, it would be a good recruiting tool if in fact there is a senior leadership position created or two, that new headmaster could be responsible for hiring so that now he or she is hiring their team, so to speak, and surrounding themselves with people that they have had an opportunity to choose. Now, in an ideal world, you'd probably want to have the headmaster on board before you do the restructuring, but given the time of year that you're in right now, and given the importance of this decision, and also because of the financial implications and budget implications, I think that would be helpful to get that sorted out as we go through the search process so that you can be clear, so that the superintendent can be clear with the potential candidates, with the finalists, as to what their responsibilities are going to be. I also think that one of the things that you may need to look at, let's hope that this second round is successful. And by the way, currently there are 16 candidates, including the 3 that I brought forward. So your pool has actually expanded. Now it's a question of what is the quality like. In discussing the situation with Chris and also with Mike Gallagher last Friday, we had a discussion about how it's a two-way street when you hire somebody to a headmaster position. You need to sell them just like they need to sell themselves. So you need to showcase Lowell and all the positive things that are going on here as a community that somebody would want to come to and be the leader of a highly visible, highly important position. The business community, according to Mike, is ready to step up to the plate and to actually play a role in showcasing Lowell to these finalists, including having luncheon meetings with key business leaders in the community. But I do think that the school district also needs, and the community needs to decide what is the strategy that we're consciously going to employ to make sure that we showcase our school, our high school, and the district as best we can to potential candidates. I also suggested to Chris that when you get someone in a position that there ought to be a central office support team comprised of the cabinet to meet with the new headmaster on a regular basis, to monitor the progress of the school, to keep open lines of communication, and to try to deflect political and media issues that are going to arise. So I think having this constant communication and making sure that there's enough support and mentoring, particularly if you leave your salary range where it is currently and the candidates are vice principals or directors and have never been a principal of a school. Now, on the issue of if the second round doesn't produce the type of person that you need, a suggestion that I might make is that you think about increasing the salary range to 130 to 145, because I've done some analysis of salaries throughout the state of your larger high schools, and what I found in doing that analysis is that most of your principals of your larger high schools throughout the state are either within that range already or exceed the range that you have. So if you want to shake out an existing principal in a larger school in this state to think about competing for the headmaster position, if you need to go out again for another round, then that would be my suggestion, is that you increase the range. I would also say that it's a little unusual that you didn't have any internal candidates in that first round, and whether you'll have any the second round, I'm not sure. But I think that Lowell, in my looking at it, really needs to think about some succession planning. And you need to take a look at what are the, given the age and the demographics of your administrative staff, how many positions do you think you're going to need in the next 3, 4, 5 years? Take a look at the cadre of people that you have within your district that have leadership potential or talent. Nurture that talent, put them in programs, in leadership training programs, get them licensed, and encourage them to apply for positions when they become available here in Lowell, because it is my understanding that there may be quite a bit of turnover going on over the next few years. So with that, I guess to conclude, the good news is that you've got 16 candidates as of today. Today is the deadline, and I'm hoping, if you agree with my recommendations, that Chris and her cabinet will be looking at those and scheduling interviews very quickly, because the other thing that you need to know is that these candidates may not just be applying to Lowell, they may be candidating in other school districts, so a lot of this is really an issue of timing. So, with that.
Thank you, Donald, very much. Do we have any questions for our guest or for the superintendent? Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, and I don't know, you may be aware of this, or our guest. The recommendation of having using executive session for the preliminary interview, is the recommendation then, and I'm pairing this with the other recommendation of having the central administration staff do the preliminary screening, if they're doing that screening and then referring it to doing an initial kind of review of everything, and then pushing their selected candidates so that they're going into the public portion of it, meeting with our community group that we've pulled together. Does that community group enjoy the same rights to executive session as an elected body?
No.
Okay, so then we wouldn't be able to do that.
You have one shot at the executive session. That's in the initial round of interviews. Once you've identified semifinalists or finalists and they're moving on in the process, it all has to be an open session.
So if we receive our applications and then they're screened by the educational leadership in the city, we then don't have the opportunity to do a private initial screening.
In the second round,
Initial
no.
interviewing, I'm sorry.
No. No, the district has one shot at the initial screening. It's either going to be done by the cabinet, which is what I'm suggesting because of the importance of this,
Okay.
and because of the experience in the first round where they went through the whole process and then it fell apart at the end. I'm suggesting that because Chris is going to be the one that's going to be choosing, that she, along with her cabinet, do the initial screening and come up with a group of candidates that they're comfortable with, and then at that point open it up to the advisory committee.
And they'd be doing their interview, they would be required to do their interviews in public?
In public.
Okay, so Dr. Scott would be doing that initial review, and then they'd be moving forward with the public portion of that, with the community committee would be doing that open interview.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other
Mr.
questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
if there's another protocol, I'm just answering the questions. Is that fine, or
That's
shall
fine.
I be going through you?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Mr. Leary?
So I guess, and thank you very much for taking the time. The only other question I have is, he's been at it a week and a half. One, if there was extended time, could you find additional candidates? I think from your conversations that you're saying the pool is, as we already know, is limited. I don't know, Madam Superintendent, what your thoughts are, or what your plan is at this point, or...
Thank you. Just a couple points. With regards to extending the timeline, we did discuss to extend the timeline to the end of the month. Two things came up with regards to that particular issue. One, we're very pleased to have 16 people in the pool presently, and we do think that timing is important, so we don't want to drag on the process. We really do feel like we need to get people in who we are interested in, because people are looking other places as well. So with that recommendation, I did speak, and Don has worked very diligently, has contacted, as he mentioned, between 25 and 30 organizations, people within the state, and with great appreciation, has brought forward 3 names. But at this time, my understanding from Don is that that's all that's out there that he knows.
A quick one, and I appreciate that, and thank you for the feedback. And I appreciate that the fact that we were being aggressive and actually asking people to apply, which is much better than just waiting to read a publication. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Larrabee?
Do we know at this point if we have any internal candidates, or is that something that has to stay confidential?
Does it have to remain confidential, Don? Because my inclination would be to answer the
I
question.
think everything ought to be held confidential at this point.
And I just have another question, just to follow up on Ms. Martin's question with regards to the first round. The process as described has been how Lowell Public Schools has processed all of these big positions, including the superintendent position. So this is a different way of us proceeding. And I just had a question with regards to the media access to the names of people who have applied. So after we go to the first round, if it's the cabinet who does the interview, and we bring forward those names, it's only the names that we bring forward to the community group that would be made public?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And before you make it public, my suggestion is that you let those finalists know that it's going to be made public, A, so B, they can let people know within their community that they're currently working before it hits the Lowell Sun. That's just good protocol, so.
Right, that is common
I would,
practice.
my suggestion is that once the cabinet or Chris comes up with their list of finalists, that there's a delay of a day or 2 or 3 to give the candidates, the finalists, time to do what they need to do within their districts, because then it's going to be a public process from then on.
Thank you. Do we, Madam Superintendent, do you need any action from the school committee this evening to, as an example, extend the timeline, or is that something that you can do administratively?
Again, at this time, we're very pleased to hear today that we have 16 people in the pool, and based on that 16, I do think that we need to proceed with that process, and I think it would be, and I would like, Don, for you to weigh in on this, but as per our discussion, I believe because we have 16, which is considerably more than other districts have been able to draw in on a position like this, I think that we should stay fast on the salary range at this time and check the pool and see who's there, and then revisit that issue.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest, because at this point, you already have got the salary range out there.
Right.
You have 16 applicants. It's only if you're unsuccessful in the second round that I'm suggesting that, in fact, now you need to change the dynamics in some way. And that would be to increase the salary range, to hopefully get experienced principals.
Any other comments, questions? Except Ms. Doherty.
I just wanted to be clear, in terms of if flipping the process, there's no action required from this committee at this time? Okay, that's fine.
I think the superintendent, and maybe Madam Superintendent already has, to be in communication with the members of that committee, just to let them know that instead of getting the 16 candidates, they're going to be getting maybe a list of...
Smaller group,
A smaller
right.
list.
But no vote is required.
Okay, great. So then I would make a motion to accept this as a report of progress. And
Motion by Ms. Doherty, accept the report as a report of progress, second by Mr. Leary. Any further discussion? All those in favor of accepting the report as a report of progress signify by saying aye. Opposed? The vote. Thank you. Ms. Larrabee, do you have a question?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, sir. Next item on the agenda are the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of March 3rd. Move for acceptance by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Doherty. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The vote. Thank you. Permission to enter. We have a number of items under permission to enter, and I'll request Madam Superintendent to walk us through the report.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first one, City of Haverhill, to amend the existing contract to provide for the additional out-of-district tuition costs for one student plus one additional student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP for the amount of $15,669. funding provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. According to school, to amend the existing contract to provide for additional out-of-district tuition costs for one student plus additional student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP, funding provided by the school department for the amount of special education tuition account for the amount of $67,323. Easter Seals, New Hampshire, for the amount of $77,485. Again, to amend an existing contract to provide for the additional out-of-district tuition costs for one student plus additional student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP. Funding also provided by the special education tuition account. Justice Resource Institute for the amount of $76,215 to amend the existing contract to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 5 students plus 2 additional students enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP. Funding for this is also provided, is also from the special education tuition account. Lighthouse Schools, $21,169 to amend the existing contract to provide for out-of-district tuition additional costs for one student plus one additional student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in their IEP. Again, this comes from special education tuition account. Melmark, New England, for the amount of $33,849 to amend the existing contract to provide for the out-of-district tuition additional costs for one student plus one additional student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP. And this comes from the special education tuition account. The Merrimack Education Center for the amount of $31,508 to amend the existing contract to provide for the out-of-district tuition additional costs for 5 students plus one additional student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP. This comes from the special education tuition account as well. North Shore Education Consortium for the amount of $2,401 to amend the existing contract to provide for the out-of-district tuition additional costs for 3 students enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP from the special education tuition account. Seam Collaborative for the amount of $20,768 to amend the existing contract to provide for out-of-district tuition additional costs for one student plus one additional student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP from the special education tuition account. The American School at Hartford for the Deaf for the amount of $2,381 to amend the existing contract to provide for the out-of-district tuition additional costs for one student enrolled and receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP. And this is from the special education tuition account as well. Town of Oxford for the amount of $18,000 to provide transportation for one special needs students to and from the Oxford House in Oxford, Mass. to Grove School in Dudley, Mass. Funding provided by the special education transportation budget. Tufts New England Medical Center for the amount of $9,242 to provide testing for various special needs students who are hospitalized. Funding provided by the special education department special education testing account. That completes the report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Move approval by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Larraba. Any questions? Roll call.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo,
Yes.
Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
Ms. Larraba,
Yes.
Mr. Leahy,
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Mr. Larry. the chair.
Mayor, can we take this out of order and go into the public participation and motions on the next part of the agenda first? We have someone who wants to speak. Is that make form as a motion?
Motion by Mr. Leary to suspend the rules to take the public participation portion out of order. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Leahy. Any discussion on moving that out of order? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Let's vote. Under public participation, we have the distinguished Mr. Topia here this evening.
Actually, I wanted the motions first. I apologize. I mean, and then.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay, then we'll go to the first motion then by Mr. Conway, and we do have someone here to speak on the motion. So the motion reads, to enhance the transparency of the operation of the Lowell Public Schools by asking the superintendent to require all reports prepared by the Lowell Public School staff at the request of the school committee to include the total number of staff hours needed to produce the report and the associated cost of preparing the reports. Second. Second for discussion by Ms. Martin. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's extremely important, and I certainly hope that people don't misunderstand this motion, but I think it's extremely important that we do get information. And I think in order to make informed decisions, we need good information, pertinent information. I think that what we also have to do is we have to take a look at what has been going on in our school department. Last year, we cut over $8 million. This year, it looks like we're going to be cutting similar numbers, and forecast for the following year is rather gloom too. And if we take a look at the numbers, we'll see that we have lost approximately 500 positions in the last approximately 500 positions in the last 6 years. Needless to say, I think the employees are working as hard as they can. However, with the demands that put on people, we have to keep in mind what our core mission is, and that's to educate each and every student. So we are spreading ourselves very thin. And I think it's extremely important that when we put motions on, that we have to realize that there's a time factor involved with this. And I think that it's important that the people know, the taxpayers know, how much time it takes, what type of money actually is going into these reports, what are we going to do with the reports, because once again, if we take a look at them, we're taking reports that take a tremendous amount of man hours and woman hours in order to accomplish the goal for us. And that time, which is extremely precious today because of the statistics I just gave you, is now being taken away from our system. So I think that going forward, we certainly have to make sure that we perhaps take a look at the way we do business, and if we can get verbal reports, I think that's extremely important. If we can take care of some of these reports, verbal reports in subcommittee meetings, and cut down on some of the paperwork so that those employees can spend the time educating our students, I think it's well worth it. So I think as far as this particular motion is concerned, I think it's important that we do take a look and find out how long these motions take, these reports take, I should say, and the cost factor involved with it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. If it's okay with my colleagues, I'd like to recognize Mr. Topia, who is registered to speak on this motion, former school committeeman, former city manager, Bill Topia. Thank you for being here, Mr. Topia.
Mr. Mayor, members of the school committee, you have the privilege of having me testify for the first time before a school committee. So be patient and tolerate my inability to speak correctly. However, this is the third time I thought of coming here. And interestingly enough, the other two times were on the superintendent picking the headmaster, which I think is, when it becomes a politically correct situation where people are going to have a big committee, it's wonder anybody applies. However, that's not my issue. My issue is Mr. Conway's motion, and it happens to be one of my pet peeves about government. City councilors, I've been yelling at them for 100 years, that city councilors can't do certain things. They can't speak directly to a department head. They can't ask any employee to do anything. As a matter of fact, in the city council's case, there's a law that says a $100 fine and 6 months in jail. Doesn't stop them, Mr. Mayor. Doesn't stop them, but that's the law. The other situation is the frustration I have had over the years is school committees are so important. And most of you people were not around when I was involved in politics 100 years ago. But I had a reputation of being an extremely conservative fellow. I never thought of going after a school committee in my life. I was chagrined last year when I found out the city decided to cut $5 million out of the school. The last chance we have at our children is in our public schools, and that last chance is in high school. Now, the situation is, I think you cut $5 million on a recommendation of the council and the mayor last year. By the way, that's about 50 cents on the tax rate. We all sold our houses. But the situation is, for years, and some of you have heard me say this, the school committee is the most important board in the city. I served on the city council, I served as a mayor, as a manager, I served in the school committee. The hardest job I had was the school committee, by the way. I tried to get the school committee a few years back a raise, and I was criticized because I was asked whether I thought the school committee should get the same money as the city council. I said, no. I think it was Mr. Richards, Councilor Richards asked me that question. I said, he should definitely get paid more. The city council, and I'm not trying to be funny, the city council has nothing to do with collective bargaining. Chapter 151E. The city council is forbidden to even talk to the city manager about collective bargaining. You people have the responsibilities of it. But more importantly, and this comes down to Mr. Conway's motion, your function is to establish a policy that's going to allow the superintendent to educate 13,000 some odd children. That's your only function within that. You have no direct line function. You hire one employee, you hire two employees, because special education, but you have direction over one employee, the superintendent. And I'm not even sure you should have subcommittees, but I would think that you have to have intelligent information to make your decisions. So therefore, you must rely on asking. By the way, none of you have individual power either. You have collective power. You have to have 4 votes before you can breathe. And I think that it's important that the majority of the committee ask the superintendent for information. They must get it. Now, I understand here Mr. Conway's argument. He says that we should not waste the superintendent's time. But his argument says we should waste our time before we waste our time by having studies whether we should waste our time or not. The situation is you cannot afford to give up your relationship with the superintendent. I think that relationship should be one that you respect her responsibility of having any direction of any other employee. I don't think you have any right to talk to the headmaster or anybody else. Having said that, it's a very important job you do. And believe me, the time you take and whatever the cost of the stamps are, or the typing, etc. may be, we don't type anymore, do we? It's your job. And the superintendent giving you those answers is her job. And I don't know how you could possibly make decisions by putting any handicap on it. Now, I have a suggestion, Mr. Conway. If there are motions being made asking the superintendent to respond to things that are trivial, miscellaneous, etc., you have your collective will. 4 people should vote against that motion. But when a motion passes this body, the superintendent should honor it like it is precious. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Topia. Any other comments on the motion at this point? Ms. Larrabee.
I certainly understand my colleagues' intent in making sure that we make motions that are well thought out, and that we communicate those motions as clearly as possible to make sure that it is it's not a cumbersome process. I've said before, I'm not willing to handicap myself by asking for just information that is available at the touch of a button. I think this adds more work on the people in place. I think I would prefer to say as a group that we will be more thoughtful about the motions that we ask for, but I really don't think that we can afford to start worrying about, oh, is this going to be cumbersome or is this going to be expensive? I think we need to be self-policing. I think we need to be thoughtful about it. But I think also in terms of verbal versus written, you have something in writing that holds somebody more accountable to what information they are presenting to you. You know, we could start getting into, you know, how much does one school committee member's motion cost versus another school committee member's motion cost. We could also start saying, how much does it cost when we go and visit classrooms? How much does it cost when we go and visit administrators and we're taking their time in the office? Because again, they're at work, and our intentions may be very good, but we're still taking some of their time. So I think we get into an area here where we can start really being picayune about what we're doing and what this costs. I think as a group, we need to communicate clearly. We need to self-police ourselves and just make sure that what we're asking for is concise as can be and as informative as can be. But we do need to have information in order to make smart choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. I think another step that we can certainly look at is in terms of, our communications are directly with the superintendent. I mean, those are the only that's the only place our requests go to. And I certainly think that the superintendent has the capacity to make recommendations. If there are ways to streamline what we're looking for, she has that ability and responsibility to ensure that the information we're getting is salient to the questions we're trying to answer. So I think that that's certainly a role that as we will be aware of what we're asking for, I think it certainly also helps that the superintendent can be aware that our requests go directly to her, and managing this process can be a conversation, can be an opportunity for her to be able to streamline some of the requests that are made to ensure that they're being done in the most efficient way possible. But at the end of the day, there is not a one of us who can sit here and make a decision if we don't have information. I think that if her expertise can allow people to do these reports more strategically and more efficiently, that's great. That's a win all over. But for our responsibility is to have this information to make our decisions, and I think that that's the kind of the end of this job that we all have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent?
I would like to thank Mr. Topia for his words and his comments. I think they're wise. And just to follow up on what Ms. Martin just said, I think that's really the spirit of the conversation that we had at the last Lowell High subcommittee meeting, when we really did want to put the motions that had been made at the end of the agenda so that they're not on a list somewhere else, so that we can pay attention to what the motions are and to get that information to the committee. But as at the very beginning of the meeting, the discussion was around when motions are made. I think it's really important as we go forward that the person who in their organization who is making the report have a conversation with the person who made the motion, so that they see the report, so that there's no misunderstanding that the information you've requested is in fact embedded in the report before it comes to the subcommittee as well. And case in point was one of the reports that Ms. Doherty requested with regards to AP. And we're going to bring in Paul Strickman to help us with that report and to work to make sure that we get that information that you have requested. So again, to work together so that there's understanding on what exactly the motion is and that the answers are there for you when you read the report.
Thank you. Mr. Leahy?
Thank you. I don't disagree with through you to Superintendent. I don't disagree really with what you're saying, and if you're saying maybe that the maker of the motion get a preview of the answer or the report, but some of the stuff I think that did come out at the last meeting was it really was kind of unfair to us, because most of the motions are pretty clear, and then when we explain them here, I think we clarify them. So if we're going to be honest here, sometimes we get motions that don't answer our questions. And that probably just has to be cleared up. I mean, it's no fault of your administration, but I think from here on, we just have to say, when a motion comes in and you send it out to wherever it goes, to whatever department, we just have to say to them, read the motion and send us the the report over, and if, you know, I'm sure sometimes when you look at them, you may disagree, or you may see something that, you know, you're not happy with, and, you know, you could just go back to and say, I think this is what they're looking for in the motion, but I guess what I'm trying to say is we just have to make a clear, conscious effort to streamline our answers and really give us the information we're looking for at the time we make the motion. I think most of the times, I just feel that they're pretty clear in general, so that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that, again, I want to make it perfectly clear that the motion is not to stop information. I think we need information. I think I made that clear. I think it's the way that we get the information is extremely important. I think the public has to realize, we have to realize, that it takes a long time to do these reports, and therefore, it costs a lot of money. That time is taken away from the core mission. That's the point that I want to make. The fact is, it is done in every other aspect of life. It's done on the federal level, it's done on the state level, and it certainly is done in the corporate world every single day. So this is not, this particular motion isn't completely out of step with the rest of the way the rest of the people do business. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Can I ask, so in what realm are you seeing people getting less accountable? I mean, in terms of government and private industry and nonprofit worlds. I mean, I'm sorry, my understanding in the corner of the world I'm living in is that accountability measures are becoming more and more strident. Every governmental grant that I've worked with has become more and more structured in the way they ask for information. So I don't know what you're drawing that information from, that experience from.
Again, I'm not sure we want to get into a debate. And again, I appreciate the thought, but Ms. Doherty.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to make a comment. I'm not going to support this motion, and primarily, I think that it was spoken earlier by our guest speaker that we have the opportunity as a committee, when we present a motion, to explain to our colleagues why we want the information, how we think it's pertinent to our core mission, which is developing policy to lead the school system, to improve the education our children receive. At that time, concerns about details of the motion or how the information is going to be used is able to be discussed. And I know I speak for myself, but I often will run my motions, you know, talk to the superintendent about it in advance, or if it has something to do with, as my motion later tonight has to do with the dropout rate, talk to the assistant superintendent of student services about what would be the best way to word this? What is the information that is going to get me the data I need to make a good decision? So I have those conversations, and then we have those conversations here on the floor. And as our speaker said, we then vote on it. And if we get 4 or more votes, we know that this body recognizes the data is important for us to do our job. And my concern is this motion seems to suppress that process, and I'm not comfortable with that. So I'm not going to support the motion.
Thank you. Would my colleagues mind if I speak from the chair, or does Mr. Okay, thank you. I understand the intent of the motion as well, and I respect Mr. Topia being here, but in picking up on something that Ms. Larraba said about maybe we need to be a little bit more thoughtful about as we bring these motions for reports forward. I've been with the school committee now for about 3 months, and I have been a little taken aback over the number of reports that are requested, and I can appreciate Mr. Conway's position that it takes staff time and administrators to put these reports together. I think we do need information. I think our decisions need to be based upon information, and I wouldn't want to see this motion suppress our ability to get that information. But I think if we are a little bit more thoughtful, and whether or not we spread these reports out, because again, we seem to be getting, again, some of them were old motions, as Mr. Leahy had responded to a question that I had, and we're finally brought forward back to the school committee. But again, in my 3 months here, I've seen a lot of effort by staff and administrators in providing information. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I don't think it should necessarily be stopped or quelled anywhere, but I do think we should pick up on what Ms. Larraba said, and maybe we need to be a little bit more thoughtful in thinking about the staff time that would go into formulating this information. And the fact that, you know, we do work with Superintendent Scott, and she's, in my opinion, been responsive to getting the reports, you know, trying to work with this committee to, you know, bring new ideas forward and so forth. And I think that as we go forward from this particular point, and again, I don't know if Mr. Conway has made his point and would like to withdraw his motion. That's entirely, the chair would certainly be willing to let you do that, depending upon your thought at this particular point in time. But again, I think it's been a good debate back and forth, and I understand and respect the intent of the motion, but I would not be in a position to support it myself. Mr. Leary.
No disrespect, Mayor, but I think all the motions that we have are pretty thoughtful. And as you articulated, some of these motions were 1.5 years in making. You know, I don't want to question someone's intent, what's important to another member or not. I mean, what's important to me is maybe not as important to Mr. Leahy or whoever. But if 4 people pass the motion, then that report has to be done. I don't think I put any non-thoughtful motions. And I talked to the superintendent as well as getting support of committee members when I do draft motions. I'm looking at the 4 motions here we have today. You know, some of them are not important to me, but to the makers might be very significant. It might have a reason why, you know, a member had a motion because someone asked them to put something on, similar to what you do on the city council. So not to be disrespectful, but I think all of our motions are thoughtful. Otherwise, I think most members would vote no. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else at this particular point in time? Well, do we want to have a roll call or just move roll call on the motion?
Miss Martin?
No.
Mayor Milanazzo?
No.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Miss Doherty?
No.
Miss Larraba?
No.
Mr. Leahy?
No.
Mr. Leary?
No.
1 yea, 6 nays, defeated.
Thank you, Mr. Topier, again for being here. Going back to the agenda, under memorials, as a committee as a whole, William Bellegarde, brother-in-law of Debbie Bellegarde, Pawtuckettville Memorial Elementary School, paraprofessional, uncle of Melissa Coy, Lincoln school teacher, and brother of Thomas Bellegarde, Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Cemeteries for the city of Lowell. May we all rise in a moment of silence in darkened chambers.
Thank you, honey.
Rest in peace. Thank you. Second motion by Mr. Conway to ask the superintendent to invite Mr. Ted Leonsis, Lowell native and alumni of Lowell High School, to the city of Lowell in order for our school.
I think we have to do unfinished business first. Permission to...
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Thank you, June. Going back on the regular agenda under unfinished business, permission to post special education director. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Honor. We requested a few weeks ago now at a subcommittee meeting for the school committee to entertain the posting of the Director of Special Education. At that time, this particular position was a 205-day position in our contract, and we were directed to have a conversation with Unit B to see if, in fact, we could extend that to a 222-day work year. As there is no one in the position that we have to negotiate with, and the Unit B, the executive of their union is appreciative of the fact that we face another very difficult time coming up this school year with regards to being able to fund various special education positions we need. So 222 days was very important to us in this particular position, and they have agreed. So it's up now for the committee. I believe I do need a vote.
Mr. Leahy?
Thank you. Through you to Superintendent, I was just wondering if our speaker earlier made a good point, and I just noticed, just on the requirements, it says to send the three letters of reference. I thought that was a good point tonight, and I just didn't want to know if we needed to, if we might want to follow that advice and just do that afterwards, so that when people do apply, they're not putting themselves out there right away, if you want to do that.
Ms.
I would
Doherty?
add the official transcripts is listed as something to apply to that he mentioned.
So basically, please submit letter of application, resume, certification at this point as well?
Yeah, and I believe, did he say a letter of intent or something, or?
Right.
Yeah.
Madam Superintendent?
Just as a point of clarification, so as the recruiter did point out, longstanding HR practices within the district, he's inviting us to revisit, and I think you made some good suggestions, Mr. Leahy. With regards to the certification, we would like to know if the person is certified. With regards to the 3 letters of reference, I agree with you, and I will have a conversation with our human resource personnel tomorrow to change this on the posting.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. Just to say that, as I know, had a very intent conversation about bringing this position back. It's a position that's certainly has been standard in our district for many, many years, is standard in most districts. And it was a real calculated choice during our budget sessions when we did choose to leave this position vacant. And I think we all did it with great concern and trepidation. We all recognized that it was taking a real chance to try and see if we could make this work without this position. And I think without question, the lesson we have learned is that we could not. That the liabilities that this opened up for us in terms of our ability to properly process IEPs and care for the children that are our responsibility, it was just untenable. And I think that, which is why I'm going to be supporting bringing back the position. I also do just want to say, I really appreciate Unit B's flexibility with this. I think this has for a very long time, been a position that warranted a traditional 222 work year. We had seen, I think, some additional costs because we didn't have this full year, where we had to bring people in when they were in this position during the summertime and, during off time. And I think having made this choice to bring it up to a 222 work year and have the union support that and allow us to do that is a real move in the right direction. So I think that's excellent. And I would make a motion to accept this recommendation from the superintendent and to post this position of Director of Special Education with a proposed salary. Am I looking in the?
It says as per contract.
It is.
I do believe we need to incorporate the salary range at least into our postings when we officially vote. Is that correct? Based on the auditor's recommendations in the past?
This one you actually don't,
You
because the contract has been negotiated. It's only non-affiliated
voted on.
positions where there's not a salary grid that need to
Okay.
have that reference. Where this has been negotiated, there's an existing salary in the contract. You don't need to vote the salary.
So we wouldn't have any flexibility then with that salary
No,
too?
you have no
There's
flexibility.
no range. Okay,
It's based on degree.
okay, excellent. Then I would make that motion.
Okay,
Without that.
I would, if you don't mind, to amend the motion, just to strike out the 3 letters of reference. And the official transcripts at this point. Motion's been made. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Doherty. Any further discussion? Mr. Leary.
Just quickly, and I apologize, I know we talked about this ad nauseum. It's obvious that we need the position. We made the decision to cut it because we had $8 million budget cut. Every vote you have to add something is a consequence somewhere down the road, and likely we're going to be looking at some other positions in the special ed department to make up for these monies too. But as Ms. Martin did say, we did add longevity to the year, to the individual. And more importantly, which is being understated, we retooled the position to be engaged in special education, which hopefully will save costs by helping us prevent issues. This is one of those, when we didn't add it last year, it was a penny wise, a pound foolish vote. But we took a chance. You have to take risks. And as When we made that vote, I just want to point this out, it's interesting, Jim Campanini actually called me up and said, how can you get rid of a special education director? And I'm like, this is Jim Campanini? That's interesting. So I think a lot of people who know these types of positions know there's a significant, savings by adding the right people in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent?
I would just, although I agreed with the expert from away with regards to requesting the 3-letter of reference, I would recommend to the committee that we keep the official transcripts there, because it's not an issue of confidentiality with their employee. That would be with their institution of higher learning. So that would just give us that information right up front. I think that would be still fine.
Is that okay? Okay. Is that okay with the maker of the motion? Okay.
Okay, so just 3 letters of...
Just the 3 letters, okay. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Now back to the motions. Motion by Mr. Conway to ask the superintendent to invite Mr. Ted Leonsis, Lowell native and alumni of Lowell High School, to the city of Lowell in order for our schools and our community to host a book signing event in recognition of his newly published book, The Business of Happiness. Second by Mr. Leahy. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion perhaps will be a little less controversial than the first one. I think with Mr. Ted Leonsis, it has, he certainly is someone that Lowell, the Lowell community, Lowell High School, can be very proud of with his distinguished career. And matter of fact, he actually did receive a number of years ago the Distinguished Alumni Recipient Award. And I think it might be a great opportunity to celebrate someone that has distinguished himself, someone that has been successful in his ventures. And he received his background and his education in Lowell. So I think it would be a great idea if we could bring him here and again show him how important it is to see one of Lowell High School's graduates become successful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Any other discussion? Ms. Doherty.
Your Honor, I just have a question. I don't know if it would be through you to my colleague or if someone, it seems a little unusual to me that we would, bring somebody in and host a book signing. I'm sure there have been other Lowell High alumni who've published books. Is there fees or costs involved for us in doing that? Because it does seem like we're promoting an individual's book. And I don't know if there's precedence that we've done this before. I am aware that Mr. Leonsis was recognized at an alumni event a few years ago. I'm sure he's been very successful. But if there is not a precedence, are we then establishing some kind of precedence that, next week someone will say, well, I published a book and I graduated Lowell High. Are you going to host a book signing for me? I'm concerned, what are the parameters of this, and if there are upfront costs? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, questions? I don't think there are, again, try to answer the question, I don't think we'll be setting a precedent, but Mr. Leahy?
I don't know. The only comment I would have to make is, I guess I could understand my colleague's concerns, but, if we just wanted to invite him in to have a talk and then he could do the book signing, but I don't know, I don't really see an issue with it. I just think, it's a great thing. He was the distinguished alumni, and I just think it'd be great to have him to come back and, and obviously I think he would speak to the high school at the time, so, thank you.
Mr. Conway?
Just very quickly, I maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe the superintendent would have this answer. If someone is a distinguished alumni recipient, do we pay for it?
I do not know, but I can look into it.
Yeah.
Mr. Leary?
And no offense, because I think it's nice to bring in folks to help, mentor our students, but we can't be flying people in And I guess the point is, I guess, and I don't know if that's your intent, you probably wasn't, okay, as far as the cost, other than, giving them, attaboy,
Right.
thanks for coming, I don't know what exactly we can afford at this point in time.
Mr. Mayor, just quickly, I think that I was trying to make a point here, that these people come in, distinguished alumni, they don't,
Right.
as far as I know, we don't pay for any of that.
My understanding,
They come on their own.
Right, it's
because
my
they're
understanding he
very-
has his own private jet, so
I think
I'm
so.
not worried about getting him here.
And I don't think he would need our money, to be
Right,
quite frank
correct.
with you.
Right. In
Thank
fact, if
you.
anything, never mind.
I think he'd love to come in and
I
see
think he
his
would
old
too.
housemaster.
Right. Class of 73, I think. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next motion by Ms. Doherty, request the superintendent prepare a report updating the committee on the district's investment in a dropout prevention programs, specifically noting any changes between 2008 and 2009 school years that may have caused the rate to double, as well as identifying June 2009 budget cuts or other issues that could impact the current school year. Second by Mr. Leary. Ms. Doherty.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to point out that this would actually be an update of information we already have. We've been doing ongoing reports on our dropout prevention programs, but also to specifically see what changed between '08 and '09, because as you may recall, it's doubled. Our dropout rate doubled between those 2 years. And we know we made significant cuts in June, but the 25 teachers, the coordinator of student services, the director of special education, all those cuts in June would not have impacted the '08-'09 dropout year because they hadn't come into place yet. So I'm really trying to pinpoint what are some of the issues that cause, we still have a good dropout rate compared to the rest of the urban districts, but to double like that in a year, I think we need to take a closer look at it. And then also see what the impacts may be of the cuts we've already made in last June. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Last motion by Ms. Doherty, request an annual spotlight on excellence to highlight the middle school sports programs. Second by Mr. Conway.
Thank you. This is pretty much speaks for itself. I did have a conversation with our athletic director and with Deputy Superintendent Jean Franco about this idea. Right now, all we do at the school committee level with our middle schools is the Knowledge Bowl, which is wonderful. I love the Knowledge Bowls. But I thought since we have really invested in our middle school sports programs as a feeder to high school sports, this would just be another way to kind of give recognition to the kids and the teams and make them feel part of the city by having them come out one night and talk about their successes. So that was my idea with that. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could, since Ms. Doherty brought up the Knowledge Bowl, Madam Superintendent asked me to note that tomorrow evening at the Butler School is the Knowledge Bowl final. Daly School, Wang School, and Sullivan School, and it starts at 6:30 at the Butler School. So, any other comments on Ms. Doherty's motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Thank you. Subcommittee reports. We have two subcommittee reports, Finance and Facilities, Lowell High School. We have a packet in our packet of information from the meeting on March 4th. Mr. Leary? Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Your Honor. We had a pretty lengthy meeting, and I'm not going to go over the blow-by-blow of it. Basically, it's a report of progress on a couple of items. The AP exam report we got was incomplete, so we'll be getting that completed data for our next Lowell High School Subcommittee meeting, which I believe is going to be March 25th. We discussed the scheduler position at length. As you know, we kind of recapped that tonight at the Finance Subcommittee meeting, so I'll defer that. We didn't make any decisions that night anyway, we just requested additional information. In terms of custodial services, we have a new program in place at the high school that it's very exciting, where we've had to cut a number of custodial positions across the district. And the high school, in response to identified needs when we have an event, like a basketball game in the gym or an event in the Irish auditorium. The staff, the custodial staff, prioritizes that area first to get that cleaned. Because usually these events are shortly after school ends in the evening, and so everybody focuses on that area so the public comes in to a very clean, the bathrooms are clean, everything's ready for the public, and that's had a good success since they initiated it. The other piece that went along with the changes with custodial services at the high school that was very good was they came up with a reporting form. So now custodians will be assigned certain areas of the high school, and then the custodial manager on shift at that time will go over and provide a checklist, was swept, cleaned, everything's to par. And there's been an immediate response, both from the custodial staff really taking pride in their accomplishment, but also from the students and faculty at the high school, feeling that everything's, the work is getting done really well. So that was a good news story. And then we got a report on the Malloy School, which is our alternative high school program. And I guess in particular, Dr. Wendy Jack has put a lot of effort into beefing up the services at this alternative school. We've added more electives. The students now get an opportunity to take physical education. Just really kind of making it a much more complete experience for them. And then we did discuss the process of when you're at the Malloy School, how does reentry work? And there's been a lot of communication around that transition for students who come back into the main high school to help them. It's it's a very large facility, there's a lot going on. We talked about the Lyceum, and actually we got an update. We looked at some attrition numbers. We're looking in the last couple of years, we've seen a big drop-off between freshman and sophomore year at the high school in student participation. I believe one number was 40% dropped out the second year. So we did have a motion with the Lyceum report. All the other ones were going to, just report as progress. But with the Lyceum, there was interest in getting more information to review the overall process of class rank and weighting in terms of equity across the curriculum. And if equity does not exist in the curriculum delivery, a logical plan must evolve to ensure academic equity across the same level in each content area. That's talking about how the freshman and sophomore classes are weighted in the Latin Lyceum and in the main high school. So that motion was asking for more information, and so we'll be following up that topic. Okay. We also discussed the early release motion asking for data about how the high school is using that time, because as my colleagues know, we are in the process of piloting early release for the K-8 system. So the idea was to start gathering information to really make sure that we're using that time to the best of our ability, because students are not in the classrooms for those early release days. And that was also a report of progress, because we are going to be getting, and I guess the superintendent will be talking about that later tonight, about how the early release time is being used throughout the district and how we want to go forward as a committee, looking at what measures of accountability will we be comfortable with in terms of making sure that the time is being used in a way that is going to really inform instruction and provide the sort of professional development support our staff needs. So that was an ongoing as well. I guess that's it at this point. Is that fast enough?
Okay.
For a 3-hour meeting. So I would.
Any of the other chairs want to add anything at this point? No, okay. Motion then by Ms. Larrabee, second by Mr. Leary, to accept the report as a report of progress. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Close the vote. Thank you. Finance report, Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. We just met at 6 o'clock this afternoon. We talked about over 3 specific items. The first item was the budget in terms of what, some of the information we received from the Lowell Sun on the Sunday paper coming from the delegation, and obviously offline from the delegation, as we all have heard, is potentially a 4% cut to Chapter 70 monies. We discussed the potential, the value of that is anywhere between, in terms of our actual deficits, anywhere between $4.8 million and $7 million. I'm talking fast about about it now because it's not in concrete, but it is an area where we can begin to plan our budget going forward. A lot of this is not a complete surprise to everybody in the body because we've been getting this information from the delegation and everywhere else since last year. In fact, I think in the superintendent's words, last year's, think this year's bad, wait till next year. So I think that's where we're at right now in the budget. I know the city council took a motion from Councilor Elliott regarding having a joint motion. I think that's obviously, I don't think we need to take a vote here on that. I think we're all in favor of doing that. I think Mr. Leahy has been instrumental from January forward trying to get that meeting set up. So I'm glad we have it set up. Being that it is Lent, I'm not going to comment on some of the comments that I heard about because I'm not going to lose my temper until after Easter, so that's a positive thing. The item number 2 we discussed today was regarding where the committee has to take action on is the Lowell High School schedule that Ms. Doherty in the previous subcommittee report articulated the need from the high school as well as the district to have a Lowell High School scheduler. The position is not alone to the high school, it's actually to the entire district. The position is actually also filling for some cuts to grant monies that actually pay for a consultant. So what we're trying to do at this point, instead of going out and having higher consultant fees in an effort not only to save money because we're losing those budgets, but to actually build capacity internally and utilize that position in a higher area where we have more control over it at less cost. We are being aggressive regarding the salary. I think the salary range is between $60,000 and $70,000. I think at this point what I'd like to do is make a motion to support the superintendent's recommendation to recommend hiring listing the position and going out to hire a high school scheduled position with a salary range between $60,000 and $70,000.
Motion's been made, second by Ms. Doherty. Any further discussion? I think we're all at the Finance Subcommittee meeting. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Larry?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
The third item was a discussion of the food service department and the current deficit. At this point, we didn't really have a long dialogue regarding that, but there was an excellent report provided from Mr. Lang, Assistant Superintendent Jay Lang's department, John Dakota, Bob Degman, and I believe Mike Cassidy also were a part of that report. And before we get into it, I want to thank them very much for their time. It was a detailed report that had high quality. I guess at this point, because we didn't have a lot of time to ask questions of Mr. Lang, and I know Committeewoman Larrabee, we had to cut it short because the start of the meeting. I guess so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Committeewoman Larrabee to begin the discussion, and I guess if anybody, and have those questions asked of Mr. Lang or of other members of the administration as needed.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Ms. Larrabee.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Larry that this was a very well thought out report and gave us a lot of information. There are a couple of things that I would still like some more information on. I know that Ms. Doherty brought up estimated other and what that is comprised of, so I know you need to look up some information on that before you can give us any kind of response. My question really has to do with when we dig down to some of the numbers in terms of food cost per meal and when we're looking at different units. I know that labor is a big part of that. I mean, a ballpark figure looks like it's 61%, and you're right, a big part of that would be resolved with addressing the substitute situation, but I still would like to figure out what a food cost per meal is running, and that would give us an idea. You did a great table here with the average number of meals in each school, but that just kind of helps extrapolate out what it should be and then kind of match out what it should be with what it actually is. And I don't know if I'm explaining that clearly enough, but that's something that we should have access to for information, and I'd like to see if we could do that. The other question I had is regarding estimated longevity. Is that a contract expense?
I'm sorry, which cost?
The estimated longevity, which it's only $1,500 in this big amount of money, but
No, I'm sorry, that's a fixed cost.
that's a fixed cost.
Employees of the school department prior to a certain date in the city as well until they actually retire, receive a longevity payment.
Okay.
So we're really, the numbers overall for the system are significantly lower than they have been. But the 1,500 is the estimated payment for the year, but that is an annual payment until those employees leave.
And that's something that'll fade out as.
It fades out over time.
So,
Can I-
I mean, really, for me, the food cost per meal, and just to understand if the food service director is looking at costs on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, so that we know if we're making any kind of adjustments that could be made, because you've given us a year information, aggregated year information, and it's just kind of hard to figure out if you have a good week, a bad week, you know, are we making those adjustments and being proactive in how we're spending some of the money?
Okay. Can I ask a few
Yes.
questions? When you first started speaking, I missed something you said about something that you and Mr. Artie were looking for.
Food cost per meal.
No, I got that, but there was something.
Oh, the other, Ms. Doherty had already talked about estimated other. I'm just kind of,
Oh, okay.
I'd like a little more information on what's included in that estimated other. And I realized that Ms. Doherty had already raised that question. And my understanding is the estimated commodities is all your food cost.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think as we had gone through the report earlier and as we've been having these conversations, I think we've all recognized that the real opportunities for savings in this cost center really do focus on changes in health insurance. And I know my colleague had just mentioned this too, the substitute line. Do we have any, given the current state of our conversations with this union, will we have any capacity to realize those kinds of savings at this point? I know we had the meeting the other night, so I don't know if we anticipate even being able to touch those issues anytime soon.
Madam Superintendent?
My understanding, when I had a conversation with Assistant Superintendent Lang on this point, was that for the most part, we couldn't talk about that because that's still being negotiated with,
Right.
that offers, we took back, that
Right.
was discussed in executive session. So to answer that, because that was exactly, Ms. Martin, the question I had asked. So we're waiting to hear back from that negotiation, and that's still kept confidential. Is that correct, Mr. Lang?
Yeah, correct. The subject matter that we spoke about in executive session is still confidential. Attorney Hall and I did meet with the union. We've been meeting with the negotiating team, have presented the offer, and we're just waiting. We asked them to get back to us within a week, so we should hear back hopefully Friday. And I'd be able to report out the next time that we actually get together as a group in executive session, but it wouldn't be prudent to say anymore.
I'm not trying to get any details. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm clear that until we have, that any of these savings, we can't even
That's
discuss
true.
at this point.
Right.
Those two big cost centers that we're kind of, our hands are tied right now, and we need to wait until this goes through
That's
the
true.
process. Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any,
Thank you.
that I was right on.
Madam Superintendent?
Just follow up on another point, Ms. Martin. We have requested a meeting with all the various unions, though, to share the budget information that we've just recently received and how dire the situation is, to look at additional issues like this, not only with that bargaining unit, but with others. Bring people to the table and say, these are our concerns, these are what options we see, what do you say? So that conversation will occur.
Thank you. I'm sorry?
I just want to finish the report.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody has any other questions. Oh, I guess, and really to epitome what Ms. Martin said, basically, is there's two driving factors, and there are benefits. The substitute cost is a little bit different than an individual cost, but it's a significant driving factor. If we didn't have, I think we had over $200,000 in substitute cost. If that was eliminated, we'd only have a $110,000 deficit. So that's some of the discussion points that obviously have been articulated. I think the only point that we made in the subcommittee is that time is of the essence. If we're going to make changes, if that's the will of the body or not the will of the body, we have to make them by the beginning of April. This can't get dragged into May. So it is what it is by April 7th, from my point of view, and we'll go from there. And that's really, it was the end of the meeting. There's no action to be taken at this point. I could ask for a motion for report of progress at this point in time.
Ms. Doherty?
Thank you. And I just had a few more comments about the food service report. I know we did run out of time. One thing I noticed, I was pleased to see that participation was 75%. That to me seems pretty good. And when we looked at the schools that had the highest participation, the Morey School jumped out at me. Now, we had done, they're looking at 87% participation, both in breakfast and lunch, where our breakfast participation was much lower, like 19% in some schools. So I saw in the report that you're looking at, one of the things you learned from some of the other districts, I think it was Methuen, where they go out and provide meals for other childcare providers around the city, which sounds like a great idea to me to expand our services, right? With the Morey, was that special pilot program that's seeing such a high participation or not?
No, we did see very good success with that pilot program last spring, but that was really just for a 6-week time
Okay.
period. And I will provide you, the next time we do a report, several of our elementary schools qualify for the universal free breakfast program. Not all schools do. So the schools that do, regardless of whether a student is eligible for free reduced lunch or a full pay student, they receive the free breakfast. And a lot of them are either doing it as an activity in the morning before school starts. Some are doing in classroom as the kids are getting warmed up for activities. So there are certain elementary schools, and the Morey is one, that does the universal breakfast program, and it's fully reimbursed by the government, and that's why those numbers are so significantly higher for breakfast than some of the other schools. But I'll give you a list of the schools that participate in that program. It's all based on free and reduced lunch thresholds, but I'll provide that the next time I do another report.
So if I could just follow up with that then. So if we increased participation, that would be a benefit, right? It would be more revenue coming in, right? I'm assuming if we're looking at Methuen's example of going out and trying to get other groups that we provide meals to, that there would be some benefit in that.
Yes, but that's different than like the universal breakfast program. We're actually getting almost like a reimbursed for providing the breakfast fully for all those kids, whether they qualify or not. The issue that we're looking into that say Methuen does is they in-house, like we're using the Rogers School as our satellite provider site. What Methuen would do is use a school like that to produce a lot of satellite meals for non-public school sites, so daycare centers or say parochial schools, charter schools, things like that, and they're able to do it at a cost where they actually make a profit on it. So their expenses are less than their revenues, and we're exploring that to see if we actually, again, we have a different contract, we have different rates and things like that. If that would be something that we could actually make money on to generate revenue to offset some of the operational loss, that's what we're looking at. But that's totally separate from the universal. I don't want that to get confused with the universal breakfast program.
But the idea, I mean, I guess my point that the idea is the more children who are buying our lunches or getting reimbursement,
Right.
the better it is. That's really. And then in terms of the substitutes, I think we had a movement. It's probably started before I even got on the school committee, to really kind of look at our day-to-day sub costs with teachers and paraprofessionals. And in looking at this data that you gave us, it jumped out at me like, we have some schools, like Lowell High School's #1 has the highest cost in substitute teachers, with the Sullivan #2 and the Robinson #3. This is from the 2008-2009 school year. Now, I recognize on one hand, it's in the contract, and, there's nothing we can do about that until we can negotiate that out. But even with it being in the contract, you're supposed to actually be sick to take a sick day, right? And I had heard that in some cases, people have a doctor's appointment, and instead of scheduling it after 3, they schedule it during the day because they know a sub will come in to cover. So I guess the point I'm getting to with this is, are we looking to kind of track employee absenteeism like we do with teachers and paraprofessionals, where it matters to the district that you come into work? And that's my question.
Through you, Mayor, on that, it is certainly something that we do. And on all of our employment contracts, it specifies a number of consecutive absences that an individual is out, that they need to provide a doctor's note or doctor's certificate. That is something we have weekly meetings and review that kind of data across the system for all employees. One of the issues, though, when you're provided when Assistant Superintendent Mulligan used to provide the day-to-day substitute teacher report, she would isolate out actual day-to-day subs from like a teacher who's just sick for one day from like a long-term leave. This data does not do that. And you spoke of the high school in particular. There was an individual at the high school who was actually on a year-long medical leave last year. So that full person's salary is technically included in that number because there was a replacement cost for it. So this report, I don't have the data when I was putting this together quickly for you to actually isolate out what is like a day-to-day absence from a long-term medical leave absence like we have done previously for the teachers. So this, and again, you spoke of the high school, but I recall there was one employee that was out for the entire year. So that cost is actually factored in. So it's a little bit different situation.
And I guess if I could just say, I'm not saying that we have to track it to that amount of detail, but I know with the teachers that we said we're going to watch for Friday absences, we're going to watch for absences over a long weekend, that to really try to get the message out, these are jobs we're talking about. The money we're spending in substitutes are jobs that we're not going to be able to have next year. I mean, $223,000 in substitutes for our food service workers. I mean, it's really, I just really want to get that message out to people that, if you're sick, obviously stay home. But if there's, if it's something else, we need you to come to work. And until we get this other stuff resolved, we've got to keep looking at how we can bring this more into line. But thank you, it was an excellent report.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We have a motion on the floor to accept the Finance Subcommittee report as a report of progress, second by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed, to vote. Thank you. Reports from the superintendent. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first report tonight will be the Level 4 school process. And the Merkland School has been designated as a Level 4 school. It is one of 37 schools that have been identified in the state as a Level 4 school. A Level 4 school, and there's quite a bit of information I've included in your packet that the Department of Education wants us to share with you and with the school community, which we have met with staff and had a parent meeting as well. But there are a couple things that I would like to point out with regards to the definition of a turnaround school and as well the timeline that we're being held to. So first of all, with regards to a turnaround school is chronically underperforming, and that's defined by looking at the MCAS data over a 4-year period. We presently have many schools in the past that have been designated as Commonwealth priority schools. Those designations are now going to be going away, and much of the terminology actually that was associated with the No Child Left Behind Act that came in 2001 and 2 is going to be removed. And since the new passage of the bill and with the new state and federal regs, this is the terminology of turnaround schools. So the law is very clear, both at the state and federal level, for us to be able to apply for federal dollars for these turnaround schools. The principal, if they've been hired as of June 30th of 2008, has to be removed from the school. There are 4 different options that you can participate in with regards to turning around the school. The turnaround model includes everything from closing a school, which that's not an option for us here, as well as displacing or quote-unquote firing half of the staff, which we're not participating in either. And there are innovation schools also included within the bill, but that doesn't pertain to a level 4 status either. And right now we are looking at a turnaround model for the school that we will replace the principal. We are, and I'll just ask you to turn to the page with regards to the stakeholders, which is the 4th page in. And it's the very first part. presently what we are working on is we are required as the first step in this level 4 process to establish a stakeholder group of 13 individuals. The law clearly states who has to be on this particular committee, and they are to work with the school and look at the data and come up with overarching suggestions for the school. This is a work in progress, not only for Lowell Public Schools, but for the state as well. Because I'll bring your attention to the next page. If you look at I, after we go through this entire process of the timeline of what we're supposed to do for a level 4 school, level I, where it says the superintendent consultant with the principal prepares and submits an annual review of the school progress to the school committee and the commissioner. A suggestion was made by this administration to the department that they now want to have what they call a redesign team, which isn't defined in this particular literature. So the stakeholder group is well defined by the law, but the redesign team, as per my conversation 2 days ago with the assistant commissioner, is really to look at the technical pieces of the redesign plan and what that will look like for that particular school. So we are continuing to work with the state as they roll out the guidelines of what exactly a design team will look like, who's supposed to sit on that design team, because the stakeholder group, as we had read it in this document, was in large part going to be part of that design team. So in fact, many of the people who are on the stakeholder team may be on the redesign team. As we move forward and get that ironed out, I will bring that information forward to the committee. But the present timeline, as described in this package, the stakeholder group convenes with all the designees, and just to give our people at home who are watching some idea, there's a designee from the Department of Ed, a school committee chair, or in this case his designee, union president or designee, administrator from the school, a teacher from the school, parent from the school, social service representative, as appropriate workforce development agencies, and EEC reps, or DAG reps, and community members. There's 13 members. As you can see, there's only 10 identified there. So we are able to select 3 other individuals, professionals, community members that we think would be appropriate. After that particular stakeholder groups puts together their recommendations, the superintendent is responsible to put together a plan within 45 days. I should also state to the committee that within 30 days of the school being designated as a level 4 school, the stakeholder group is expected to convene and to do their work. That 30-day timeline has not started yet, even though we've been notified officially that it is a level 4 school. The timeline will be given to us, my understanding is, within the week. Again, that could be pushed out further, but I will let you know. And as that timeline gets pushed out, so does this whole timeline. So after 45 days, so we come up with a plan after that point. C, within 30 days of the local stakeholder group's recommendation, the superintendent shall create a redesign plan for up to 3 years. This redesign plan, in part, is where I believe they're going to have us convene perhaps another committee. So in conversation with the department, I'm thinking, at least in our case, many of the people who are on the stakeholder group could also serve in the redesign group, because we really do want experts from the school and from the district on the original planning. So the plan must include steps to address the following. Clearly, the achievement gap, our ELL programs, a financial plan for the school, address social services and health needs, improve or expand child welfare services, law enforcement, and improve workforce development services, which may not be the case in this particular case because it's an elementary school. Under C2, the redesign plan shall include measurable annual goals, including but not limited to all of the following: MCAS, progress in areas of academic underperformance, progress among subgroups, a reduction of achievement gaps. Student promotion and graduation and dropout rates will also be taken into consideration, as well as student attendance, dismissal, and expulsion hearings, etc. College readiness, developmentally appropriate child assessment, pre-K to 3 level, acquisition of 21st century skills, student safety and discipline, family and parent engagement, building a culture of academic success among students, building a culture of student support among school faculty and staff. I'd also just like to come back to the very first point with regards to MCAS measurement. We have also been given material to indicate clearly that the growth data will also be considered, although it's not listed there. Under C3, the superintendent may include the following, and I won't read all 16, but just to give you the breadth of the responsibility that the superintendent has with regards to turning around the school. There are many issues that the commissioner will be looking at to have addressed in these schools, and they range from expanding or changing the curriculum, reallocating school department budget monies, as well as the monies that we would be eligible for from Race to the Top, provide additional funds, differentiate instruction, impact bargain, etc. So I don't necessarily have to go through the whole list, but as you can see, it's quite extensive. And in many cases, as for example, 13 will impact collective bargaining rights at the district. D, within 30 days, the school committee, a local union may appeal to the commissioner if in fact the proposal that for the school that's developed, if the committee does not or takes issue with any points of the plan, they can appeal, as well as the union if there's in fact they disagree with any part of the plan. And you can be sure that it's the intent of your superintendent to have total buy-in from all of you and the union as we move forward. The commissioner has 30 days to notify, in fact, if he's authorized this plan or not. A point that should be made here is that the commissioner has authorization to approve the plan. If he doesn't approve the plan, what that means for the district is that we are not entitled to apply for any of the Race to the Top funds, which could be upward to $500,000 a year. That's a competitive grant, and that's not guaranteed. And if in fact the commissioner rejects the proposal, out of hand, we are still responsible to turn around the school within 3 years, or it's the intent of the state to come in and to take the school over at a level 5. The superintendent shall be responsible for meeting the goals of the redesign plan. And a teacher with a professional status in a level 4 school may be dismissed for good cause. That's how the collective bargaining would be impacted. For good cause is a very legal term, and again goes to teachers' evaluations. And the superintendent, in consultation with the principal, prepares and submits an annual review of the school progress to the school committee and commissioner. And again, just to bring up the redesign plan, and the people who are going to sit on that redesign team really need to collaboratively come together to present the progress of the school. So at this point, as I indicated in your last FYI packet, we did have a community meeting with our parents at the school. We had a relatively good turnout. We had interpreters there to speak with our parents, to share with them this information. And clearly, as we move forward, we will need to engage our parent community at the school. And really, my hope as superintendent is that the parent community will also be involved in not only the traditional parent-teacher association responsibilities, but also sitting and looking at data and what does the data tell us about the school and the direction, so that the parent community has a sense of urgency, the same sense of urgency that we have to address these longstanding issues. We have had a very frank conversation with the staff at the Merkland School. They understand the parameters of my responsibilities and what we're required to do under the law, and that I guaranteed them that the plan that we would come up with over the next few months, that all of them would not agree with. And to the extent that they had good evaluations, that we would work with the union to have them placed in other grade levels that were appropriate to the certification. But that we were expecting teachers who were going to sign on to the plan to work diligently on the plan, and that they would be evaluated accordingly. So we do appreciate the work that the Merkland staff has done over this past school year on addressing many of the outstanding issues that we see needed to be addressed and will be addressed in the plan that comes forward.
Any comments, questions regarding the level 4? Ms. Doherty?
Your Honor, through you to the superintendent, I don't know if you have the answer to this yet, because I know a lot of this is still in flux, but when, on line H, when it says that a teacher with professional status may be dismissed for good cause, does that mean move to another school, or does that mean?
That means firing.
You mean terminating the position, and there is expedited arbitration if there is a pushback on that?
Right. This goes to my point when I mentioned for good cause. So that's a term we would use in evaluation, so that, you know, we've done an evaluation, and for good cause, this person is not, you know, basically meeting our standard. So at that point, and that was a, you know, I know that that is in the bill, and it was a long fought to some people wanted it, some people didn't. And there was a lot of debate around that particular point, but that's what it means.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Larraba?
I just wanted to make a comment. I did attend the parent meeting with the superintendent, and obviously they're all concerned and nervous about about what's going to happen, but I think kudos to the superintendent in trying to communicate to them what was happening and you know, what the expectations are. So I just wanted to say that out loud, and the staff there also very concerned, and clearly morale is a little low, but you know, they seem like they're going to step up for the fight.
Very hardworking.
Yeah, very hardworking. So I just want to say that I support the work they're going to be doing. I support the work that the administration is doing to work to turn that around. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Accept the report as a report of progress by Ms. Larraba, second by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Vote, thank you. Charter school update?
Thank you, Your Honor. The update on the charter school. As I informed the committee, the Commissioner of Education made the recommendation, and the Board of Education recommended that the middle school of grades 5 through 8 at the Lowell Community Charter School be returned, those students would return to Lowell Public Schools. However, it wasn't as we had originally discussed. It was over a 2-year period. Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy, Deputy Superintendent Jean Franco, myself, and John Dakota met with the staff of the Lowell Community Charter School to discuss the decision of the board, and they have been requested by the commissioner to place their 7th and 8th grade class for next year into Lowell Public Schools, and the year after the 5th and 6th grade. To be quite frank with you, we discussed as a cabinet many different combinations with regards to how to best handle the influx of these students, which we welcome with open arms. And We do feel that we will obviously be able to meet their needs, but at this time, we do not feel that we can add additional strands, given the fact that the count in the various classrooms that these children would enter would still be under class size of 30. This year, we're seeing, we don't think we'll see much more than 50 students of the 150 come into Lowell Public, but we have seen a significant number right now. And so then the fall, we would be expecting 100 or just over 100 to complete that number. If these students don't opt to go to parochial private schools, so that's still a question. I'd take any questions from the committee on this matter.
Any questions? Ms. Martin?
I just have a quick question, and I don't know if I heard you correctly. So we've seen some students who've already moved into the public schools from the charter school. So you're anticipating that of the 150 that are coming next year, only 50 would actually come to the public schools?
No,
Okay.
I'm thinking that no more than 50 would come this year. I
Okay.
believe we
That
have
was
just over 30 right now.
Okay.
And that may go up to 50, but based on my conversation with Joan, we don't think so.
That makes sense. Thank you very much for clarifying that for me.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary to accept the report as a report of progress. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Let's vote. Thank you. Long-term use of consultants. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a project that we were working on, and Jackie Doherty had requested a motion. By her motion, she made a request for us to look at the use of consultants long-term throughout the district. And the use of consultants in school districts is a long-standing practice, and as I look into the future, I believe it will continue to be necessary. It is a very, and I thank both Joyce Tepper-Benham and Jean Franco for this detailed report. And a lot of, as you can see, both, and I don't know to what extent the committee would like me to go in to the use and the various tables, but I did request, when I first looked at this report, for us to add the total cost of the funding sources for these consultants, so that the committee could see that, it varies from local funding to grant funding. And again, as to the extent that these consultants aren't grant funded as we go forward, and grants are both from the federal and the state level, it will be difficult for us to continue this level of professional development without those type of funds. I would like to ask Deputy Superintendent Jean Franco if she'd like to comment on the work.
Just for the committee's knowledge, just the first part is really about what we've done with all the consultants over time, and then the second part of the report, the last page is a synopsis, what we've done internally, just to answer the question, because we have done quite a bit of work with our internal capacity. For example, as stated in the last page of the first report, the ELL work over the last 7 years has been done internally. We've had a train-the-trainer model for a long period of time, training our own to in fact deliver the 4 categories, which is the approved training of the Department of Education. Most recently, in the last, 6 years, as all of the people who have been long-standing on the committee know in math, we've been building capacity with the math program, and so a lot of the external consulting pieces of the math program have in fact dissipated, because we have the internal capacity, and our coaches have done that. With the new addition of our literacy person, Dr. Phyllis Schlichter, there's been a lot of internal training at this particular point, so the external training piece was passed over to Dr. Schlichter, who has successfully just completed, we're going to have at the next curriculum subcommittee meeting, 1,000 teachers have been trained this year in Lowell, personally by Dr. Schlichter. So reconnecting the 5 components of balanced literacy has happened with that work. So this report just is put forward for everybody to kind of see the district internal capacity, which has been afforded the district by the support of coaching and the support of the coordinator, even though central office in both student services and curriculum has changed over time with budget cuts, that the internal capacity continues to flourish as best as we possibly can. So that's what we try to do in making the report possible for you all, and we'd entertain any questions you may have.
Ms. Larrabee?
Thank you. I was actually very impressed with this report, and I did notice that in several areas the use of consultants has gone down. My question really has to do with how do we evaluate the consulting programs for effectiveness? Because I have to say, quite frankly, I got an awful lot of feedback from teachers who were worried that we were going to cut teachers for teachers specifically, and I can't tell you how much they praised this program. So I guess I really just want to know, are we doing regular evaluations on them, and how do we go forward with that?
Yes, I can answer that. After all evaluations, since professional development was intensified after the Reform Act, a part of every professional development asks for an evaluation after each session. So we have substantial evaluation forms that we look at as a district, whether it's internal or external. So in essence, we look at that. And for those of us who are internal, we use that for the next session, because we always have that question, what do we need more of? And we can actually look over this at the next curriculum subcommittee meeting also. We have substantial feedback for Teachers, and also over time for Metamorphosis, which was Lucy West and that coaching pieces. We have all that, which we have kept in our school system since the beginning of PD, especially after reform.
Okay, Ms. Martin and Ms. Doherty.
Couple quick questions, one to follow up actually on my colleague's question. So as we talk about evaluation, could you tell me what are we evaluating teachers' responses? I've seen certainly evaluation forms that say, what, did you find this helpful? Will you apply this in your everyday life? Is this us gleaning information from that single source, or are we able to actually tie it to performance standards? Not performance standards, I misspoke, but performance achievement.
Actually, we do both. We look at, how that warm fuzzy, did you like this and why, which we do after a session. But then, in fact, looking at the data, at whatever school, could have been a school that does not have outside consultant or is internal consultant and outside consultant, and we're doing data conversations and data searches with all of our schools to say what has happened as a result of student looking at, now that we're using the Fountas and Pinnell, the actual grade level ability, what kids level they're at, what in fact that's looking at. So we are compiling that for all grades. So at a school, I'm going to use the Morey for example. We just finished at the Merkland School looking at data with the teachers. My staff went in, looked at individual data. Why do you think this kid's doing that? As a result of the actual teaching and, in fact, Ms. Martin, the consulting piece. So try to glean the growth patterns. So we're looking at both what teachers say and then the actual data of student achievement and compiling the information. And that's how you really assess how you continue with outside and internal training. So that's all part, and we have to have a report of what it looks like 3 years later, 2 years later, and we look at that. That's how you change the scope of services every year. When you say that really didn't give us what we wanted with student data. In fact, either something else has to happen based on the achievement information, or we need to do something different, or this service doesn't work. So that's how we judge it. So that happens ongoing.
Okay, Madam Superintendent?
And just to follow up, Ms. Martin, and that's exactly the question the state is looking for when we look at the turnaround model, for example. And really, the turnaround redesign model at the Merkland School is just good practices that should be in all of our schools. And that's the level of accountability that they're going to be looking at, because as you can appreciate, they're going to fund professional development initiatives, and they want it to result in student achievement. So they're going to ask us, how do we triangulate that circle from the PD to what the teachers say about the professional development to how does it impact student achievement? If they don't see it there, then it doesn't matter really what the feedback is. It really does have to translate.
And we can actually show that at this point for the Merkland, where it's been with the consultants, and I don't know, I know one specific one that's in there, but I don't know where. It's
Right.
difficult to tell where these consultants are actually being implemented based on the report, but there's been, I know, a lot of work at the Merkland.
Yes.
And the data is showing that they're showing great improvement, and yet they've been termed a level 4 school. So I'm not sure where that tie-in is.
Right, I'll speak, and then Assistant Superintendent Franco. Yeah, those consultants started last year, and it is definitely appreciated that these are longstanding issues and that there are many things that have to be addressed at the school. And so it's going to take, we do have 3 years, and to be quite frank, 3 to 5 years is usually the window to address these chronically, these chronic issues. I didn't know. Franco?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, is there only one consultant group working at that school? These other listings don't include them at all?
I believe there's math. Math consultant has also worked with the coach as a district.
As a district,
Yeah.
yes, as a district.
So they are getting the other supports that the rest of the district are getting as well? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I have a few housekeeping questions. So as we look at the report and you're showing us the total cost, is that the total cost over multiple years, or is that the total cost within this current fiscal year?
That's the total of all funding spent over time. So if you see the 180 for Collins, who no longer works in the district because we have reached capacity and we continue that internally, that's the total of all those years. So the amount there is the money spent, total expenditures over time. So if it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever, that's the total.
And these are calendar years?
School years, 06.
I'm sorry, so they're school years?
Yes, they're school
So
years.
this would be 2008, 2009, and 2009, 2010?
Yes.
So could you tell me what we spent in this current school year for Teach for Teachers? Because my understanding was that we spent $185,000 in this current school year.
No, the first year, this year, the first contract that went through was $100,000. And last year it was about $80,000. That does not include, that includes the consulting fees. That does not include the substitute fees. That was not, if there were substitutes involved. So this is just, per the motion, what was paid to consultants. So that is the 2008, 2009 school year, 2009, 2010 school year, so 2 years. So that's how the data was.
Okay, nope, I just wanted to make sure I was comparing the same things, because
Yep.
there are multiple years in some cases, and I just wanted to make sure we're looking at the same numbers. And certainly, as my colleague has mentioned, I've had contact from individuals about this specific consulting situation. I'm looking forward to coming to see them in action. I've been invited to one of the schools to observe, and certainly interested to see what's going on in the classroom. I'll also say that, again, there are, I don't have problems with bringing consultants for, when we have a limited need that can only be met in a limited time frame. But again, we're talking about the differential of paying $1,500 a day for a service versus a full-time, well-qualified teacher who would be charging with benefits under $500 a day. And that's when you'd have 180 days of their services. So I think that it's unrealistic for us to expect. I recognize the superintendent is, worked with a lot of these different consultants and is looking to continue that work in a lot of different ways. I hope we're able to do that in the ways that it's appropriate. But I think it's unrealistic for us to think that we're going to be able to maintain this level of expenditure in consultants when you're telling me that you recognize that building the internal capacity is the most important thing to do. So we agree on that. Perhaps we just don't agree on the speed and the timeline with which we're going to make that happen. But I think our current economic situation is going to make that decision for us, in all honesty. Thank you.
Ms. Doherty, then Mr. Leary.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. I thought it really gave us quite a bit of information. I appreciate the effort that went into it. My question is, when we looked at some of them, the total cost says and local funding. Is there anywhere that I didn't see it that gives us how much came out of local funding for each year, and if it's not in this report, I don't know, I didn't see it, maybe we could get that later. And then my second question is, for the ones that are grant funded, are they specific, like the grant will only be able to be used for consultants for professional development, as opposed to us building our own capacity internally for professional? I mean, that's my question about the grant piece of it. And is there some variation depending on the grant?
It always depends on the grant. When we had secondary reading grants, there was a partnership. So part of that came with, in fact, a consultant and to build internal capacity and coaching. When we had Read Excellence grants, that's how you began your literacy specialists way back in 98 or so, shortly after I was here, where you had the consultants, of which two of the members were teachers. Teachers worked for Tufts at that particular time, way back, and so we had 3 different people that came in, so that was a combination. It depends on the grant. Sometimes, just like with school improvement, you can choose to use the money on hiring, a number of consultants or staff or reading, it depends on the grant. So many times it's in the RFP of the grant of how, in fact. So many times when you'll see the grant funding, that was something that was contingent upon the grant, or sometimes when local funding is mixed. Many times we will use the grant and then as a result say, we need to do this in all schools. So we'll use the grant to full capacity, and then we'll say, oh, we need to do, and that has been done over time. So some of those are a combination, depending. A lot of it has to do with the grant, and then a lot of it has to do with purpose and what we're seeing for progress.
Mr. Larry.
Ms. Doherty asked the 2 questions that I was going to ask. I just make a quick statement, basically, is that ultimately the budget is going to decide what we're going to be doing next year. And I guess when we look at not only the grants that we're spending, as well as the local funding for consultants, we need to start looking at Title I funds, too, in terms of saving positions first, because this is going to be a very bumpy year. And as enough said there, I don't think we need to do it tonight, extrapolate these numbers, but I think we're going to be going through that exercise in April and May as we make these decisions and having these long, detailed discussions in terms of how do we continue to survive next year. Enough said.
Any other questions on the report? Motion by Ms. Doherty, second by Mr. Leary, to accept the report on long-term use of consultants as a report of progress. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Well, thank you. Early release day update. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lowell Public Schools conducted its first pre-K to 8 early release day on February the 24th, and because of a new online system, we were able to survey our staff, and I won't go into the details of how the survey works, but the majority of comments were positive, with schools indicating the day was productive. One respondent commented the day was extremely productive. All appreciated the uninterrupted time to focus on teaching and learning, a real sense of professionalism and excitement to have the time to work together. Another person said the time gave the literacy specialist a much-needed opportunity to get everyone on the same page before we move forward. The teachers found the training useful, and it was extremely beneficial for everyone to be together to be able to ask particular questions. The responses also delineated the type of professional development activities that were available during the early release time, and they include the following, but they weren't just limited to these particular activities. Fontes and Purnell reading and assessment, which Deputy Franco has spoken about, using accountable talk and mathematics instruction, working with struggling ELL students. Schools also reported that many grade level teams of teachers used the time to address curricular and instructional issues that were particular to their team. These included, but were not limited to, detailed planning for the use of common trade, continued planning for a mini unit on selectionalism prior to the Civil War, with a focus on lessons differentiated by interest and ability, and development of a series of differentiated lessons to supplement CMP materials. The information that we've gathered throughout the system was very positive. We didn't have a great deal of complaints or issues arise from students not being home or in the wrong place. We did have a few students, and that was dealt with in a very competent manner. And the Family Resource Center, John Dakota and his team assisted as well on a few incidents where communication had to be relayed to home with regards to the half-day. But building on the strengths, we do think it's very important for us to continue to be able to offer, given the limited time in our teacher's contract, for our staff to work together. And the proposal that I'm making here is that the committee consider the following 6 dates: October 27th, December 15th, January 26th, March 30th, April 27th, and May 25th to be designated as the half-days in the calendar year next year. There was also a suggestion made that we designate it to be on a Wednesday, and that we ask all of our principals to put their staff meeting on a Wednesday so that we could get an extra hour to this half-day release to work on the professional development that we deem necessary at the time. There are a full detailed report of all the different events that all the professional development that was offered throughout the system is also attached. I'll entertain questions.
Ms. Larrabee?
I just wanted to say that I actually got a lot of positive feedback from a number of teachers as well. They really enjoyed the opportunity to be able to have that set time to discuss their different things. And I have to personally say that I was thrilled to get this and know what each part was doing. I mean, for me, I found it very informational. I found it very, I don't know if comforting is the right word, but to know that, the phys ed teachers had a set goal in mind, the, allied arts, your paraprofessionals, you even have parent liaisons listed in here. I think if they're all as well organized as this, that it would be a good thing going forward.
Madam Superintendent?
Thank you for the feedback. Throughout the district, we up until the committee did vote to give us the half-days so that our staff could work together, many of the specialty teachers really didn't have the opportunity to come together as a group to work: fine arts teachers, music teachers, gym teachers. And again, where we are held to such a high standard, not to have time in our contract for our educators to work on the professional development that needs to be done so that we can ensure the standards are maintained, is very problematic. This definitely is a solution to address that problem.
Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was very happy to see the report. I think it did give a lot of good information. As you know, I had major reservations about the times the kids are going to be not in front of their teachers, not getting instruction. And at this point, I would like to recommend that we take the reports, because they're very detailed reports, and refer them to the curriculum subcommittee, if my colleague, chair of that committee, is okay, to have a discussion about how we go forward with reporting on these early release days, and specifically include the high school in that discussion. Invite whoever they would like to come to that meeting, because I know there was some confusion about what I was looking for from the high school early release report. And in this report that you've given us, it just says Lowell High. I'd like to have a conversation where we all sit down, we come up with something that's not, unwieldy for the administrators who are running these programs, but also gives us the information we need to make sure that if we are going to approve this for next year, that everybody's got a comfort level, that there is a focus throughout the district in terms of what I really see this is about. I understand teachers need communication, but it's really about improving instruction.
Correct.
I think we all agree that's what we want to do, is improve instruction. So I don't really have an answer right now of what would be a way to put that accountability piece in for us without putting a great deal of work on your end. I'd like to have that conversation. I thought curriculum might be a good place to do it. And with that said, I really wouldn't be comfortable tonight to vote on the the number 5, the calendar year that puts those dates in, until we're all on the same page. Now, I know you've got another, we gave 3 pilots for this year. There's another day coming the end of March.
No, May.
Oh, it's not till May, the next one? Oh, so we only had 2 pilots for this
Correct.
year? Oh, it was only 2, okay. I guess there's one in March,
We want it more.
the high
but
school?
by the time.
the end of March, the high school has one. So, I mean, that's my suggestion. I don't know if you have, I just would like to have a conversation about if we are going to implement this across the district next year, and I definitely recognize the need for it. I hear what you're saying. But from my seat, I want to make sure that we're sending those kids home early. There's got to be a really good reason. I love to hear what Ms. Franco said earlier about the tying the consultants and evaluating it with teacher response, and also looking at data in terms of achievement in the classroom. I think that kind of connection really is where the state is demanding we go and where we should be looking to go as well. So I would make that as a form of a motion to recommend this report go to the curriculum subcommittee for further discussion, to report back to the committee as a whole, once we get some feedback from you, how you would like to go forward with accountability measures.
We have a motion on the floor, a second by Ms. Martin. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Aye.
It's a vote. So then, we would then be tabling item number 5, the 2010-2011 school year calendar. Madam Superintendent?
Should be a roll.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Leahy.
Can I just make one comment about the early release?
Oh, yes.
Thing? I like the whole report. I thought this is a step in the right direction. I just had kind of like just a side note, if you could look into it again, Madam Superintendent. This is, a lot of good work went into this, but again, I just want to ask you, can we make sure that we work on having the parent meetings next year? We had talked about it before, about it's supposed to be in the contract to have the 2, a night meeting and an afternoon meeting, and I just feel like with all this good work here, we need to put it on the other side too, to get the parents involved, and we need to really make sure that that's happening, so,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Larraba?
I'm not sure who to ask this question of. I know that we've sent it to the curriculum, but I'm wondering a time frame here, because I believe we need to get an answer to getting the early release days to complete the calendar part, and I think we need to get the calendar part finalized as soon as possible so we can send that information
I
out.
think Madam Superintendent, answer that.
Thank you for the concern. That was going to be my suggestion. My suggestion would be to perhaps vote the school calendar without those half-days in there, just to set, because we've had a lot of requests from staff wanting to know when the different breaks are and what the throughout the year, so that they can plan for their families. So my suggestion would be to vote the calendar without those dates, to not hold up people's, staff's ability to plan.
Okay, motion by Ms. Doherty, second by Mr. Leary to approve the 2010-2011 school year calendar as amended. Ms. Larraba.
I just have a question. Can we explain to me the rationale behind going to school on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then having the Friday and the Monday off? And the reason I ask that is that my experience with my own child and friends' children is that those 3 days, while important for teachers to get lined up, tend to be a little wasted on the kids, because it's 3 days and then all of a sudden you have a long weekend. So I'm just trying to understand what the rationale is behind continuing to do that.
Madam Superintendent.
That question hasn't been posed to me, except for the fact that that's been longstanding, and I don't know if any of my cabinet or any committee member knows the history behind, I guess, Mr. Leahy.
Mr. Leahy.
I asked the same question and a few years back, and I guess this was put into the teacher's contract, and the teachers wanted it, and when I brought it up, I was told to leave it alone, because they like it. They come in, the kids get acclimated to the classroom, the teachers like it, and then it just gets them off to a better start, I'm told, the next week. They've had a few days, they're into the classroom, get the bugs worked out, and then boom, after the long weekend, they come in, and that's how it was explained to me.
Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Ron. If I could maybe shed a little light on it. This happened well before my term, but I think every new person brings it up, because I certainly brought it up too. My understanding was years ago, I don't remember how many, but it was a while, we had a really bad winter, several snowstorms, and I actually was living here at the time, but my son was only he wasn't in school yet. And they almost had to go to school in July, which I guess is against the law in Massachusetts. You can't go to school in July. So they were looking at possibly having Saturday days. I mean, it was getting right up till the end of June. And this was actually very difficult to make this change in the contract. It did not come easily. I don't know if the teachers wanted it that much, because as you know, it cuts your summer short, you know, and so that was my understanding. It was this very close call, one year, and Jean Franco's nodding, so she probably was here at the time, and that prompted this idea of, well, let's come back a little earlier and then break it up so you have this, a couple of days to get used to being in school all day, teachers and students, and then a couple of days break, and then you come back again. But that's why it's not an easy thing to change.
Ms. Larrabee?
So I guess my question is it in fact in the contract? Because I still kind of get to the point, or back to the point where, in terms of actual learning in the classroom, there doesn't seem to be any. And when you look at, from a parent's perspective, you have that 3 days and the kids get in there, and no disrespect, but it's really not about shortening or lengthening the summertime. It's about 3 days of not having any learning. And when you look at the tail end, and we're into May, you lose a number of weeks at the end of May because the kids are all, or part of June, the kids are all excited about getting out for the summertime. So I feel that we lose quite a few days in this kind of shakeup. And so, you know, if it's a contract, in the contract, then that's something to obviously talk about in future. But if it's not something that's in the contract, I'd like to look at. Well, she's saying it's definitely in the contract, so.
Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, it happened a lot more than 1 year. It happened a number of years where we ran into some problems with the days, especially towards the end of the year. And to be quite frank with you, many of those schools became very hot and very uncomfortable for the students. And again, we had a lot of days off during the year, and it always got to that right to the 30th of the month. And that's when I think they decided that we needed to change things around here a bit and to start a little bit earlier.
Sorry,
Ms.
why have the Friday off? I mean, I understand wanting to start earlier, so we're not, but again, you go 3 days, and then you have a 4-day weekend. Why not just get them in there for it and have a Monday off, and then you're another 4-day week?
I don't have an answer. Mr. Leahy?
It's just the way they presented it in the contract. They wanted the long weekend. They still wanted to preserve the Labor Day weekend, but they wanted to get those days in before. So you have the Friday off and the Monday off. Just the way they did it, I know.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the calendar as amended. We don't need a roll call, do we? All those in favor of the calendar as amended signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Thank you. 2010 graduation dates. Oh. Ms. Doherty.
That is our, that June 2nd date is a school committee meeting, so I think we would have to vote not to meet that night so that we could all go to the graduation.
On June 2nd?
So would that be two separate motions, do you think, or just say one motion is to accept the graduation dates? I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Artie, second by Mr. Leahy to accept the graduation dates as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to vote. And then
A motion to cancel the school committee meeting for Wednesday, June 2nd,
by
so that
Mr.
we can go
Artie.
to the graduation.
Amen.
By Ms.
Cancel.
Okay, by Mr. Artie, second by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor of canceling the June 2nd school committee meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to vote. Thank you.
Oh, good.
List of eligible teachers, Madam Superintendent.
I submit the report. Is there any question?
Any questions? Okay.
Motion to accept the report?
Motion by Mr. Artie, second by Ms. Martin to accept the report. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Personnel report.
I submit the report, and all the retirees of the committees does send a letter congratulating them.
Okay. Accept the report by Mr. Larrabee. You have a question? Quick question.
And just looking at the retirement dates, do we have any leeway or ability to say it's at the end of the year and not right in the middle of the school year? Or a month into the school year? Do we have any leeway at all to ask these people to?
No.
Everybody's shaking their heads, okay.
I need a
Accept the
second.
report. Motion by Ms. Larrabee, second by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Under new business, New England College of Optometry, the Child Self-Refraction Study. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. This is a wonderful opportunity, I think, for our students here in Lowell, that the New England College of Optometry will send basically a vision bus to Lowell to visit various schools and to basically give eye exams and provide eyeglasses for students who are in need. We do have to bring it before the committee for a vote because there is a study associated with it, as it is with the New England College of Optometry. And I would ask Deputy Superintendent Franco to expand.
The reason why we just brought it to the floor is because, in fact, we usually would do curriculum subcommittee, but because we want to get as many kids glasses as quickly as possible, we brought it directly to this group. And as you see in the report, it is funded for kids to get glasses. And I think Ian Murphy knows more about it. Ian, you want to do that if that's okay?
Has to be a roll call because there's money.
Thank you. If I could just provide a little information for you. This was actually presented to us by the Health Department, and they got it via DPH. And what the study is looking at is to determine if students would be able to take an adjustable lens and adjust it to a prescription. And the glasses, the refracting glasses, they're actually looking to use them in developing countries. So what the study would do is, for our students who have already taken their vision screening through the health nurses, the school nurses, those students who failed, typically we send a note home, ask the parents to take the students to a doctor to have a comprehensive eye exam. Some do that, unfortunately, some do not. And we seem to be constantly trying to get kids to get their comprehensive eye exam. What this study would afford us would be for those students who failed the initial screening, vision screening, the vision van would come out with the doctors and would provide a comprehensive eye exam for our students. Once it was determined if the student would require a prescription for corrective lenses, once that's determined what the prescription would be, the doctor would have the student put on the self-adjusting glasses to see if the student could actually adjust the glasses to meet the prescription. And that's the research part of it. So they're looking to see if students in grades 7 through 10 could actually do this themselves. And if it lines up the way they would like it to, then they're looking to provide those self-correcting glasses to developing countries. What we get out of it is that the students get a comprehensive eye exam, they will get their prescription, and if families need assistance with resources within the community, they will help families with that.
Okay, move to approve by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Doherty. I believe we need a roll call.
Ms. Martin? Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Under convention and conference requests, we have 8 requests, plus a date change request that,
Can we take them all together?
sure. Moved by Ms. Doherty, second by Ms. Martin, and take them all together. Anybody have any questions on any one of them? Okay, motion to approve by Ms. Doherty, second by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Ms. Martin? Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Under communications, again, Lowell Telecommunications, Channel 10, broadcast of school committee meetings live on the first and third Wednesday of the month, Thursdays at 6 p.m., Saturday and Sundays at 2 p.m., and Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Professional personnel. We have 2 items. The members of the SEIU 888 LPS clerks hereby request to donate 5 sick leave days to special education clerk Georgia Karamusianis. And the second one, can I do them both same? Oh, sorry. Yes, Ms. Larrabee.
I just wanted some clarification. Are these people who are out on long-term disability? I understand that the employees are deciding on their own to donate time, but are these employees on long-term sickness or illness? I mean, is there?
My understanding is some may be, but some may not be as well. But Mr. Lang, could you speak to that, please?
Sure. Each of these employees would have been approved under the Family Medical Leave Act for a leave due to some type of an illness. Yeah, they've exhausted all of their own personal accumulated sick time. They've exhausted any extended sick leave that would have been available to them under the contract, and this is their remaining recourse to continue receiving payment while they're on their leave.
But it may have been at a different time, so they may need these sick days, but it's because they used up the time at a different time. So they may be sick now and have no days left.
Well, that's the bottom line, right?
Right.
And these are all voluntary on the parts of the people donating them. They're not required to do that. They just on their own have said
Yes.
that they will sign up.
Correct.
The second one, the members of the United Teachers of Lowell hereby request to donate 21 sick leave days to Sullivan School teacher Elizabeth Skrikas. Motion to approve both by Ms. Martin, second by Mr. Leahy. Roll call.
Ms. Martin? Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Any civil service items this evening? Hearing none. Again, a reminder, the Knowledge Bowl finals tomorrow night at 6:30 at the Butler School. Daly, Wing, and Sullivan School are all participating. Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, Miss Martin's a judge. Oh, we'll have to be there then.
Yes, really, because it's all about the judging.
I have a
Clearly,
meeting at
that's what
6,
you
but
need to focus
I have a
on.
meeting at 6. I'll be late.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Ms. Doherty, second by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.